Hey, what's up, guys? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 77 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. And let me introduce our special guest for today, Johnny Strong, who's going to be answering our questions today. Johnny, welcome aboard the Talk4 podcast, man. Please say hi to the fine people listening and just give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do before I shoot a few questions.
Thanks for having me on, Louis. I appreciate it. I'm Johnny Strong. I I guess I'd consider myself a guerrilla artist. Make music and movies and all sorts of stuff. Steel, um, different things like that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff that you're doing, and obviously, you've got your movie coming out soon, which I got a chance to have a look at. Really good stuff. You're perfect for the role of a Navy SEAL. That's 100% sure. And yeah, I've seen a bit about the music, so you got a few very cool things going. But if you're ready, I'd love
Yeah.
to wind back the clocks and just kick off question one. So how did you actually get into acting in the first place, and how did you secure your first role? I think that's a good place to start.
My family was in the movie business, so they've been working with studios and all that kind of stuff before I was born.
Hmm.
And when I was a kid, like I think my first job was when I was 5 years old. I modeled kids' Western clothing on like morning television shows,
Hmm.
like those. I don't know if they still have them now. I don't watch television much, but they had these like Good Morning LA or whatever it was, back in the day.
Hmm.
And so I modeled kids' clothing, and I did auditions for different roles in movies and all that kind of stuff as a kid. And so that's really what got me started in the movie business as an actor. Um, and then and then I sort of I had a one situation with one audition. I don't know if I should say what movie it was, but it was a massive movie. And I remember I was sitting with the director and the casting and everybody in the room, and they said, before we even did the scene, they said, "Well, Johnny, do you want to be in the movie?" And I said, "No, I don't want to be in this movie," because I didn't really understand what it was. I was still really young, and I guess kind of nervous at that point. So, so I got out of it for a while, but then after I dropped out of high school, I picked up my first kind of real job as a young adult in a television show called America's Most Wanted,
Hmm.
where they hunt down fugitives and stuff like that. And that kind of set me on my adult career of as an actor, in movies and stuff.
Nice. I mean, obviously, since then it's been a pretty impressive portfolio. And now you've gone into sort of like the directing role and stuff. So you've clearly had a very profound career and kind of climbed the ladder to that point. So really interesting. But obviously, kind of when you search your name up and stuff, and obviously the things I've kind of seen about you, straight away noticed that you obviously had a very good role in Blackhawk Down. Absolutely a legendary movie. So as a military fan myself, and obviously as a fan of the movie too, I'd love to know just can you tell me how you came to get that role in particular for Down, and how did that experience change your career going forwards?
Well, in retrospect, I look back at just about everything in my life as, and I address it in my film that I just wrote and directed and starred in, Warhorse One. I kind of interjected my own sort of kind of philosophy in life that I don't know if it's fate, destiny, or the hand of God, which sort of guides us along our journey. Um, but the role of Randy Sughart was magical in so many ways for me. Um, th- so if you go back, they made a film called Pearl Harbor. Um, and I remember I'd say one of the best, if not the best, casting directors in Hollywood. Bonnie Timmerman at the time was casting that film,
Mhm.
and Jerry Bruckheimer was producing it. And I remember they called me in, and I met with Bonnie, and I read the script, and I told her I don't really like the script, but um, if I would do it or play a part, I'd like this other part of this um, character. And she said, no, Ben Affleck is playing that part, so that's not up. But the other roles, and I said, yeah, I'm not really interested in. And she did her best to try to convince me that I should do it. You know, I went downstairs in the offices at Jerry's place, and they had this giant like a 3D model of Pearl Harbor and the boats and all this kind of stuff, and she was kind of telling me all the kind of stuff that they were going to do for the movie.
Right.
And I was pretty adamant that I didn't like the script, but which is not a dig on anybody. I just wasn't my personal taste. And we sat in her office for a while and talked, and she realized that I wasn't really going to budge on my feelings on that. And she said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'm casting a film soon with Ridley Scott directing, and you'd be great in that movie." And I said, "Okay, great, awesome, love you, great to see you." And I went about my business. Um, and then I'm trying to make this as concise for you as possible. I don't want to just chew your ear off. But one day I was working out in my living room with this weight vest I got, and it was kicking my ass because it was a brand new weight vest, and I was doing pull-ups and push-ups and body weight stuff.
As they do.
And yeah, right. Um, and my television was on in the background, and it just so happened to be on the History Channel at the time, and there was a television show called I think it was called Deadliest Missions or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. Um, but I wasn't watching it. It was just on in the background so I could hear it while I was training, you know? And and it started to play. It was like these little vignetted stories of these deadliest missions, and it was like deadliest sniper missions, and it talked about these two snipers that were volunteered to go into rescue these downed helicopter pilots and sort of set up a perimeter and protect them. And I was listening to this while I was working out, and it got to the end about what they did, and it was so moving to me. I started crying. I I was like moved, like deeply moved.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you what it was, but I it was like a magical feeling, and I said, I need to do that in the movie. Like I could do that. I could show that, you know?
Yeah.
Um I can't a lot of people like when you say things like that, sometimes they go, ah yeah, whatever, whatever. Like this was a fucking magical moment in my life. And I knew it. Like I felt it in my spirit. So, anyways, and that had nothing to do with Bonnie or anybody or movie stuff or anything. It was just this moment in my life where I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. That there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I felt it. And so,
Wow.
cut to years later, I'm doing other movies, you know, and I'm actually, and this is a side story, is I'm on the set of The Fast and the Furious, and I just shot this little sequence where I'm telling this one kid to he's gonna go race a car or something like that. And so I was like, okay, you know, dude, blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay, great. And they're like, go back to your trailer, and we got some other stuff for you later on. So I'm walking back to my trailer, and Vin Diesel is sitting in his um on the steps of his trailer, and he says, Johnny. And I'm like, what's up, man? And he's like, have you read this script? And I said, what script is it? And he goes, it's called Blackhawk Down. And he's like, you'd be great for this movie. And I was like, no, I haven't heard about it. Oh, he's like, yeah, it's Jerry Bruckheimer. Da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, cool, man, whatever, and I went back to my trailer and I got home and I called my manager and I was like, sorry if my phone goes off. I called my manager and I said, there's a movie called Blackhawk Down. I had no idea what it was, but it's about like the army or something. Like, look into it. So my manager looks into it and then eventually gets back to me and says, Johnny, we have Bonnie's casting this. And I didn't put it together that this was the movie she talked about like a year or 2 years prior or whenever it was, timing wise. And so they sent me what's called, I don't know if you know in acting, they like give us, they're called sides. And it's basically like scenes that you read as a character.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, so they sent me them. Right. And I was reading these breakdowns and sometimes they come with a breakdown of like, this is who's directing it. This is producing it, like kind of like what the story is about, synopsis, all this kind of stuff. And I read it and I read through the characters and it was like Sergeant so-and-so, this guy, da, da, da. And then it had like some Delta sniper operators, And I was reading those, the description. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But it was like, so I wasn't paying attention really, mm-hmm. at the time. I was just like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. I'll one of these Delta guys. Right. So, but the scene that they wanted me to read was of this young Ranger who's like an 18-year-old who's shot in a femoral artery and wounded and bleeding out. And so this is a scene where, and the young man that actually got this character and played that part in the film did such an amazing job. But I remember I called my manager and said, no, man, I don't want to read for this part. There's another part, the Delta sniper, or I think that's a cool part, And he goes, nah, everybody's reading for this. You got to read for this. Da, da, da. So I go in to see Bonnie to try to sum it up for you. I go in to see Bonnie and I have it planned out that I'm going to read it like a Delta operator, like a seasoned guy that's been a part of the unit and been through like the most grueling selection in the world. Like that's like the unit, the Delta guys, it's like an ongoing selection. Like sometimes with like Green Berets or SEALs, you go through like a process and then you're in. Like Delta's like, it's a constant selection.
Yep.
So anyways, so I was like, that's how I'm going to read it, how this guy is wounded, bleeding out. And so I read the scene with Bonnie and she knew what I was doing.
Mm.
And she said, well, Johnny, he's 18. He's talking about, tell my mom I did a great job. He's really worried about this. He's panicked, And I was like, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do it again. And I did it the exact same way. I just did it like the way I perceived a Delta guy would do it,
Yeah.
And if you hear a lawnmower in the back, that's my fucking neighbor. And she knew what I was doing. She knew it. And she goes, are you sure that's the way you want to do it? I was like, I'm exactly sure that's the way I want to do it. I love you, Bonnie. Thank you. And I went about my business and literally weeks later, I got a phone call. Do you have your passport? Are you ready to travel? And I was like, what for? You got this role. You got this role in the film Blackhawk Down. And I had forgotten about it. And I said, send me the breakdown. Tell me what role it is. And they sent me one page of a breakdown. And it had two parts. One was Randall Shugart and one was Gary Gordon. And I read the description of the character. And my mind instantly returned to being in my living room, working out and seeing that or listening to that History Channel show.
Yeah.
And it was like an instant connection. And it was like the hair just stood up on my body, and I was like, it was, I don't know if it's fate, destiny, or the hand of God, to be honest with you. But it was one of those things, if not all those things. And such an absolute honor to be able to portray him in a film and sort of immortalize him on the screen.
Wow.
But yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to blabber on, but it's a
No.
very, it's a very important story, because a lot of times in movies, Lou, you don't get an opportunity, and maybe we can talk about that on another question or something. But there's this old adage of we have two lives, right? The first life you live, however you live it, and then the second life you live is when you realize you only get one. And when I was younger, it was like, as an actor, you're doing movies and stuff, and it's just about, oh, I got a job and this and that, and rarely you get the opportunity to do things that have meaning, you know. Um, and that was one of them. So I'm so proud of that film, and what a great opportunity.
Wow. I mean, that is just awesome how that ties in. And you're right. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing coincidence how that's all panned out. But yeah, I mean, I can tell. I mean, there must be something so, so special to you. But something I'm observing here, just kind of as you're talking, and obviously kind of looking at the roles you've had in the past, a lot of that's kind of based around military. And obviously Warhorse One, very military based. And, the stuff that you're talking about here suggests heavily that you're a big kind of military fan. So I'm just interested, like, what's your kind of connection or the passion for the military stuff? And where does that stem from in you? Is that just something you've always been really, really interested in?
Um, the thing is, two things. Number one, I got to correct you. There's no such thing as coincidence. Um, that's a way for human beings to pass off what's happening in the spiritual realm of why things are connected. We call it coincidence like that because, if we really took the time to try to connect the dots, it would be much more confusing. And as a species, we don't want to be confused. We have this desire to understand things, and figure things out and identify things. So there is no such thing as coincidence. The second thing is, I don't know if I'd call myself a fan of the military. I think war is probably the worst thing we can engage in this existence. Violence is brutal. So, but what it is, I'd say, there was a point in my life where I almost joined the military, but I got a call about a film called The Fast and the Furious. And it, like, the intersections of life, sometimes that fate, destiny thing happens.
Got to pick your door, yeah.
And I ended up, and man, I just picked that door. But the whole time, I've been training, like, on any given day of the week, you would come to my house and I'd be in my backyard in the bottom of my pool with weights, doing dive training and shit. So I've always, I don't know what it is. I like the concept of, like, it's a two-part thing, I think. If and I'm kind of unprepared to answer that question, but if I had to answer it on the spot, I'd say it's a two-part thing. Number one is adversity, doing things that make you uncomfortable, and pushing yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually to levels of growth and progress. I think that's something that I'm drawn to. And the other thing is commitment. One of the things that I relate to a lot of times, a lot of my friends are ex-military, and a lot of my friends are ex-SF guys as well. And it's this level of, like, commitment where it's like do or die. And I'm an all or nothing kind of guy myself. If I'm going to train, like, my normal life, right? I've been doing I'm a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been doing it for 25 years.
Wow.
I'll do it till I'm dead. I'm committed to, the things that I commit to. It's all or nothing, So in that regard, I think that's where I relate. And there's something different in that world, and what I really wanted to touch on in Warhorse was individuals that will go above and beyond. The difference between the average and the above average in stressful situations is the above average will have that moment of courage or bravery that the average or below average would say, fuck that, I'm not going out there. There's bullets everywhere,
Yeah.
Where these guys, whether it be natural, as part of who they are, and I think that has something to do with it, not just the training, because I know people that train that don't have that in them. There's something unique and special there. And I also think that there's this kind of strange epigenetic thing that, at least for me, that what's the calling? Why do you submit yourself to that kind of overcoming of stress and adversity? And I often say to the guys that I train and teach, I say, maybe that's something deep within our DNA, standing on a hillside across a valley of other guys standing on a hillside with spears and shields, looking at each other going, yeah, we're going to go take these guys' skulls home, there's something about that, I don't know what it is, but I relate to it.
I like that. That's a really good answer. And well, look, if we're talking about Warhorse One now, then, so this is interesting because obviously you've taken a kind of a move towards directing now in Warhorse One, which it's coming out on June 3rd by what I can see here. So obviously most of your work has been in acting in the past, but in this case you took a lot of new responsibility and a vital role on top of the acting in the movie. So what was it like for you finding your footing with directing, and how did you approach and manage to piece together all the moving parts that come with directing a movie?
Well, two things. June 30th, it's in theaters. And then on July 4th, it's on digital and video on demand. The film comes out. As far as directing is concerned, to be honest, everything creative comes from the same well. It's water from the same well or the same spring, whether I'm writing something or painting something or drawing something or playing an instrument or doing jujitsu or directing or pointing a camera or doing whatever. It all comes from a creative, artistic standpoint. I don't separate it. And I have friends that are directors that, that's all they do. There is no other outlet for them, For me, I don't label one thing to be like, it's just like, it's no difference of directing a movie than playing the guitar or fighting or drawing or whatever, it's all the same thing to me. So there's been no real jump for me. It's a natural, and that's always what I've wanted to do. And you can always tell me to shut up if I go too long on a question, but I remember when I was a young man sitting in a movie theater and I went to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Great, mate.
And I looked up at the screen and I saw Harrison as Indiana Jones, and I thought, that's what I want to do in a movie. I want to make movies, because in my mind, Harrison's the lead guy and he made the movie, And And then as I got older, I got into the acting side of it. And I remember the first couple projects I worked on, I was like on set as the actor, and I'm like, okay, here's my idea. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do this. Da, da, da. And I remember like the director being like, no, man, you just stand there, see that little X on the floor, you stand there, you hit your mark, you say your line, and try to do it quickly.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, what the fuck? I was like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this, you know? And then I realized, like, after working on a couple smaller projects, that the film, like movies, are really a director's medium. Um, and I was, as a teenager, I remember thinking, man, this sucks. I love making music. I like acting. I like writing. I have these great ideas. I know what I want the camera to do. And I remember thinking, man, there's no place for me in this world because everything is compartmentalized. This guy has to do this and this guy has to do this. And then one day, I was getting into older films, like they had these movie theaters in Los Angeles where you can go see these old black and white movies from the 20s and 30s and stuff.
Right.
And I remember I went to go see a movie called The Kid, and one of my favorite movies of all time. And I thought Chaplin and Coogan were just outstanding. The chemistry was amazing. I loved the writing. I loved the storyline. I loved everything about it. And then at the end of the film, I saw the credits, and it was like starring Charlie Chaplin, directed by Charlie Chaplin, written by Charlie Chaplin, and I was I was stunned. I was like, "You're I didn't know you were allowed to do that." And so that's been my goal the whole time, you know, and and it's sort of miraculous in a way that my first film, in a lot of ways, resembles The Kid, the movie The Kid, about this guy who's unfortunately put in the situation as the protector of this little kid. Um, and writing, directing, starring, scoring, and doing just about everything on the movie, um, including making people food on set. um, to me, that's what it should be. That's the way I envisioned making movies, was like, you do everything.
Wow, fair enough. I mean, it's a hell of a hell of a lot of stuff to do, but like you said, I mean, you seem to have really found your footing there, and you've come out with a really fantastic end product. And obviously a lot of experience gained from doing that, I'm sure as well. I mean, either way, no matter how well you found your footing, it's a new experience. I'm sure you've taken a lot away from it. So, just last question then. How do you feel your style and work is going to evolve now going forward? What have been some of the biggest takeaways from your first directing role? And as well, do you want to stick to kind of a military theme in the future, or would you like to broaden the spectrum in future projects?
That's a big question. I'll tell you what. To me, it's one of the um, movies are interesting because um, if you don't, like, I do it my way and independently. If you're doing it with a studio system, you're kind of at the mercy of um, what other people want you to make. And a lot of times in that type of setting, you have people that are making creative decisions that shouldn't be making creative decisions. So I really enjoy not being hindered by outside influence, and just being able to write and create and make the films and the stories that I want to make. Um, I just finished writing the sequel to Warhorse One, um, which will follow the main character. Again, I wouldn't say it's very military driven, other than, and even, the thing about Warhorse One is, um, it's not, it's sort of like circumstantial that the main character is in the military. Like, um, you could tell the same story if the guy was a firefighter or a policeman or a janitor, whatever it might be,
Mm,
um, you could tell the same story, but just different in a different way. And that's the thing, a lot of military films, like if it's about like the Navy SEALs, then the movie's about the Navy SEALs, or the TV show's about the Navy SEALs. For me, it's not really that's kind of circumstantial. Um, although it's kind of like you know, it's a natural fit. I don't know if you um got that in the movie, but at least for me, I feel like this is the best thing I've ever done as far as any of my work is concerned, like and not that a movie's better than another movie, but as far as my personal achievement of, you know, my thing is like trying to strip away all the affectation of outside influence and be as authentic as possible with the material, you know? And I feel like, with this film I was able to achieve that um as clearly as I've ever been able to do anything. You know what I mean? And so I don't know if it'll be military. I mean, I'd love to make a film about anything.
mm.
As long as it's meaningful. I think in my life at this point, all I want to do is make things that are meaningful. That people can experience and walk away from, and like this film is one of the most magical things is I was able to sit some people I know down and on multiple occasions, and I look over while there's something that moves me in the film, and I look over and they're in tears watching the movie. And I think it's one of those things that is so uniquely special about film, which is visual and audio, and then this third element, this trinity, right? This third element of those things together and that magic that's created by that. And I'm fascinated by it, and that's what I want to continue to do.
Mm, absolutely. Something I've been talking with some of the guests about recently over like the last few episodes, something that's come up quite a bit is that when you look at the kind of the involvements and stuff with like AI and everything nowadays, and you see these kind of like musicians and stuff kind of turning towards generated stuff, it really kills the heart and soul of creation, human creation stuff. It's horrible how that happens, but you have these musicians and you have these artists. You look at the generated art nowadays, but it's never going to be quite what a painter is. It's never going to be quite what someone can make from the guitar. As a musician, I'm sure you know about this, but when you look at this kind of a thing too, it's so important to have something like a movie, which is art. It is art, and you need to have that vision in there. You need to have that persona, and from you, what you've done here is really fantastic, because you've definitely kept true to yourself and you've really kept that authenticity, like you said, in this movie. So really, it's a display of just not just a movie, but it's also a display of human creativity, and it's something that's really come from you, not just like a whole plethora of teams and AI things just to make it something that's super profitable. So it really, really nice to see someone creating now in this industry where it's become so saturated down, someone who's staying really true to these morals and these standards. So it's great to see. But obviously 4 questions done, and I'm sure loads of people now would love to go and see this movie. So it is time, before we wrap this up, for what I love to call the shameless plug. So Johnny, just feel free to take a minute and promote Warhorse One. Where can we find it? And also your social media, and just anything you want people to take a look at.
Warhorse One is a very special film, and it is going to be in theaters June 30th. It's being released by Wellgo USA. Fantastic company that I've been so blessed to work with, family run and owned. And then it will be on digital and VOD on July 4th, Independence Day, which I think is really appropriate.
Yeah.
As far as plugs are concerned, social media is cancer in a lot of ways. So I'd say avoid that at all costs. But if you're gonna be on there, I would follow the Operator Films Warhorse One page. I've got a page on there, but you don't need to follow that. And other than that, the last thing I want to say is this life is so incredibly short. Live it with meaning.
Strong words to finish off with, absolutely. And yeah, Johnny, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and thanks for sharing the movie. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see how the reaction is to it, for sure.
Thanks, Louis. I appreciate it.
No worries, and thank you guys for listening. This has been episode 77, and if you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at our channel, and if you'd like to listen in for the future ones, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now, and fights on!